FSA had their FSA had their session. So I do apologize. We had a conflict with our national leadership team. So we wanted to share with you some of the.
If you don't have an attendee, there are 48 participants on the call, including you. You are joining your conference as a participant. For a menu of available commands, press *#. Press *#.
So you will have to mute your phone or we'll continue to get the echo. Can you please... we can hear this.
Excuse me, everybody. Somebody's phone is unmuted, and it is causing a lot of feedback. Thank you.
Okay, let's try that again. Again, good morning, everybody. Thank you for coming on and participating on this webinar. We're hoping to provide you information on the Natural Resource Conservation Service, NRCS's programs that we have available for producers and for people that have been affected by this fire. I am Roylene Comes at Night. I am the state conservationist for the Natural Resource Conservation Service here in Washington State. We want to go through with you so that we hope that you will be able to find maybe some avenues and some venues of program dollars that might be able to help your circumstances or your situation. Just to give you a little bit of a preview to let you know that we have already requested additional funds from the national office for fire specifically, in hopes that we can do a sign up and an obligation to you very quickly. So we have already inquired and we have submitted our request for additional funds for fires through our Environmental Quality Incentive Program. So Keith Griswold, our assistant for programs, will be talking to you about the ins and outs of that program, along with another program that we have called the Emergency Watershed Program, EWP, which is another program, and our state engineer, Larry Johnson, will be talking to you also about those specific details about that program. And then we'd like to open it up for questions at the end if you have any for us, and also if, you know, if there's certain circumstances and things that we need to be aware of with the fire, please let us know, because we'll definitely do our best to see how we can accommodate the circumstances in the situation. So with that, Nick, I'm going to turn it back to you.
All right. Thank you, Roylene. Our first presenter is Larry Johnson, our state conservation engineer. There's our agenda, sorry. He's going to go over the Emergency Watershed Protection Program, known as EWP. So Larry, are you ready? Larry, are you out there? Larry, if you're speaking, you must be muted. Okay, I just got a message from Larry. He's going to call in on a different line. He's having some problems.
Are you able to hear me now, Nick?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, good. Very good. Sorry about that. Technical challenges every time we do one of these meetings, so I apologize for that. So my name is Larry Johnson. I am the State Conservation Engineer. I'm also the Program Manager for the Emergency Watershed Protection Program. So what I'm going to do is just give you a high-level overview of how the program is set up, and hopefully by the end you have a clear picture about how the program functions and works and provides assistance to communities that have been impacted by a natural disaster. So with that, just to start out with a quick overview here, the EWP program helps landowners, operators, and individuals implement the emergency recovery measures to relieve imminent hazards to life and property created by a natural disaster that has caused a sudden impairment to a watershed. There's a lot in there to break down, and we'll break down the general overview statement so that you know what that means from the standpoint of program eligibility and implementation. So assistance must be through an eligible project sponsor, and we'll talk about what an eligible project sponsor is here in just a minute. Okay. Natural disaster. EWP is available to communities whenever a natural disaster creates a sudden watershed impairment that poses an imminent threat to life and property. Imminent threat to life and property, let's go to the definitions of that. Imminent threat is defined as immediate action is needed in order to protect life and property. Property is defined as any artificial structure permanently affixed to the land, such as, but not limited to, houses, buildings, roads, utilities, structures, dams, things of that nature. Standing timber, orchards, growing crops, and other agronomic crops are not considered property under the EWP program. Recovery timeline. The project sponsor, NRCS, have 220 days to complete the project from the time the funding has been allocated to the state. And just to touch on that real quickly, allocations to the state are based on a request made to the state conservationists, and we have not done that to date. So that clock has not started ticking yet. Eligible measures. Any work that we do must reduce the threat to life or property from a watershed impairment, including sedimentation and debris removal. Must also provide protection from additional flooding or soil erosion by retarding runoff. And debris removal deposited by natural disaster that would affect runoff or erosion. We can restore the hydraulic capacity to the natural environment to the maximum extent practical based on pre-event conditions. What that is saying is that we can, so for example, if we had a post-fire flood that filled in a channel and that channel was causing flooding that impacted property, then we could go in and clean the channel out to its pre-flood or pre-fire condition. And the last thing is all measures must be economically, socially, and environmentally defensible. Okay, let's focus on wildfires here just for a sec. Watershed protection measures must address post-fire flooding and mud and debris flows. So with EWP, what we're really doing is we are targeting the threat to life and property as a result of the wildfires occurring and rain events that could occur after the fires have passed. Eligible measures for wildfires. Typical practices would be berms and diversions, debris basins, mulching, and seeding. And just a quick note, somebody doesn't have their mute button on, so if you could make sure that your mute button's on, that would be great, and then we'll have questions at the end of the presentation. All right, thank you. All right, there are limitations with EWP. NRCS may not provide any assistance on federal land. We cannot provide assistance to dispose of animal carcasses. We cannot perform O&M, such as periodic or routine work necessary to maintain the efficiency and effectiveness of measures to perform as originally intended. We cannot solve watershed or natural problems that existed prior to a natural disaster. We cannot repair, rebuild, or maintain public or private transportation facilities. So protecting or repairing roads and bridges is strictly forbidden through the program. This is an area where there's always a lot of interest. And we have, over the past 20 years, worked with National Office to get more clarification on that. And that is just something that simply we cannot do. So there's a very strict prohibition on that. We cannot increase the pre-disaster capacity of a channel by constructing a new channel or enlarging the old channel or relocating the stream. And we cannot drill or modify wells, construct pipelines, or install irrigation equipment or purchase portable equipment. And there's more limitations, but they don't really tie into wildfires, so I left them off. Cost share. Financial assistance is available to eligible sponsors at a 75%. And the sponsor is required to contribute 25%. Technical assistance is provided at 100% through our direct technical assistance. And typically what we do is we ask the project sponsor to help on a number of things that we may not have capacity to handle at this point in time. So let's talk about a project sponsor. A project sponsor is any legal subdivision of state, county, local government, or tribe. And a project sponsor has to commit to do a few things and also have the capabilities to do a few things. They must provide documentation that they've utilized all of their local resources. And typically that's looking at financial capabilities. Must be willing to enter into agreement with NRCS. Must contribute 25% matching funds for the entire cost of the restoration work, and they must be able to acquire all easements to complete the restoration activities. They must also acquire all permits for the restoration activities and have the capability to carry out all operation maintenance responsibilities, and may be required to administer construction contracting as well. A request for federal assistance is required. It's fairly simple. A qualified sponsor would request assistance from Roy Lane through a letter. We have a template letter that hits on all of the things that the sponsor agrees to. And that is something we can easily send out. Our DCs and ACs, as well as the state office folks, would have access to this information. So we'd be happy to send out the template as needed. The request from a qualified sponsor is required within 120 days of the event. And that's just a brief overview of the EWP program. I'll just check in right now to see if there's any quick questions, and we'll have a general question and answer session at the end as well. So any immediate questions? Okay, well, if you do have questions in your mind, we can respond to those at the end as well. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, Larry. A reminder, please mute your phones if you haven't done that just yet. Now's the time. Our next speaker is going to be Keith Griswold. Keith's our Assistant State Conservationist for Programs. Keith, are you ready?
Yes, I am. Good morning, everyone. I'm going to discuss the opportunities we have through the Environmental Quality Incentives Program, or otherwise known as Eqip. For fiscal year 21, we have our Eqip sign-up coming up for the Eqip Wildfire Fund Pool. You need to submit an application and have your eligibility requirements with FSA done and completed by November 20th. Here's a list of what the requirements are going to be for applying for Eqip, and then the additional one for the Wildfire Fund Pool. You need to own or control the land. You have to have all your eligibility documents with Farm Service Agency or FSA. One is the Highly Erodible Lands Conservation and Wetland Conservation Certification, otherwise known as the 80-1026. You have to get your farm and track establishment established with FSA, so the farm and track numbers for the land units. And you have to meet the adjusted gross income requirement, not exceeding $900,000 for fiscal year 21. I was informed here yesterday that FSA is accepting the fiscal year 21 AGI forms at this time, so they'll be able to get them processed. One of the requirements, though, for this special fund pool that we're going to establish this year is the land units offered for the wildfire recovery must have been within the 2020 Washington wildfire season. Burnt areas will have a polygon from the state and federal agencies of the areas that have been burned, and also have been burnt or destroyed. As fires go through there, not everything gets burnt or destroyed. We are only going to be working on things that have been burnt or destroyed. We are currently looking at this list of practices for the fund pool. It's not a total list yet. We're trying to make sure that we can get the majority of things put in there. But this is what we're currently looking at. We will have a decision soon, and it will be posted on our Washington webpage once the decision has been made. Currently we're looking at fencing, water, livestock pipeline, watering facilities, spring developments, pumping plants, that is if you need to pump water for your livestock watering system. Obstruction removal, where if we have burnt fences, a burnt watering facility, something that we need to get out of the way so that we can reinstall conservation practices. We're looking at prescribed grazing with deferred grazing only as the option. We're looking at plantings. They need to be scheduled within for installation within the first year of the contract. And there are 3 there with critical area, wildlife habitat, and range plantings. We have riparian forest buffer, tree and shrub establishment, tree and shrub site prep, and woody residue treatment. Like I said before, I'm going to reiterate it. This is not a fully complete list yet. We wanted to give you guys an idea of what we're looking at. And once the full list is out there, it will be made public on our webpage. Just to give you an example of the things we're looking at picture-wise. What are some of the prohibited items and actions we cannot do with Eqip? Eqip does not allow us to do a boundary fence. All of the fencing has to be internal. So it gives you an explanation of separate ownership, exclude domestic livestock from transportation, residential, commercial, or industrial areas. Basically, we cannot assist on the financial assistance to put exterior fencing in. It is prohibited. You cannot use used materials for any of our practice standards. We cannot restore, rebuild, or purchase equipment, and there's an example list there. We cannot restore, rebuild, or purchase buildings. Those are other items that are prohibited within Eqip. Do you have any questions? All right, Nick, I'll turn it back to you then.
Okay. Questions are open for both Eqip and EWP. So if you had anything that Larry mentioned, that now's the time for Larry or Keith.
This is Craig Nelson.
Hi, Craig.
Is it possible to get a cover crop covered as far as eligible expense under Eqip for fire recovery? Because we're dealing with a lot of areas that are very prone to wind erosion, particularly through wintertime. We don't have a good solid snow cover, which is kind of hit and miss in a lot of areas.
This is Keith. We can talk about a cover crop. We do have critical area planting in on our list here as an allowable practice, but I'll write that down on cover crop and see whether our conservation practice standard allows it or not, because each conservation practice standard has a purpose and a practice for where the use is.
Okay. Yeah, I just, there's a lot of areas between Okanagan and Douglas counties that I think could really use this. It could be critical in not only sustaining, those crops, but also preventing, damages and health concerns going through the winter and into next spring if we can do that and do it quickly. So, thank you.
Can do. I've got it on the list. Thank you, sir.
Can anyone hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Hi, this is David Morgan. Sorry if I just talked over someone there. I'm with the Chelan-Douglas Land Trust. We're a nonprofit. We've not previously participated in the Eqip program. It sounded like there were some eligibility components mentioned a couple of slides back. So my first basic question is, can a nonprofit organization that's not producing, not growing like a farm, for example, but is just about sage grouse habitat, participate in any of these Eqip programs?
Well, the basic requirements are that you own or control the land. So if you lease the land, that would make you eligible for the Eqip program. You would have to get your farm service records established within there to take care of your 80-1026, your farm and tract, and your adjusted gross income. For entities, you also have to get your 902 or 901 form, and that is within an entity, you have to list the members of the organization. So this is the normal USDA eligibility requirements for our programs.
Thank you.
You bet.
I was just curious. Sorry, I was just curious about your boundary lines or your boundary fences. Are you guys not going to? Is there not a waiver that we can seek through the federal government and through the state to allow for boundary line fencing coverages?
Who is speaking?
Sorry, this is Jackie Richter, Paulville Tribe.
Hi, Jackie. I do not know of any waiver. Well, let me rephrase that. In the Eqip manual, there is no definition of a waiver that it says we could ask for, but it doesn't prohibit us from asking it. That would be a discussion that I would need to have with Roylene and see if they would be, we would be willing to submit it to headquarters and see if they would approve it. But it is definitely outside of our control without an approved waiver.
I'm just thinking that with the devastation and the fire loss in our county alone, that it may be worth a bigger discussion and a deeper discussion.
I will put it on my list of action items to discuss with the state con. Thank you.
Yeah, Jackie, we definitely can take that information forward and ask headquarters. And, what we can do is we can submit a waiver and all they can say is no. So I think we can work with, and get the data put together and see if we can request a waiver to that policy.
Okay, thank you. If you need any assistance from us, Roylene, just let me know. I'm sure there's quite a few of us that would be able to throw support letters and beyond.
This is Nick Vera. I'm being told that some of the participants are having problems unmuting their phones. So, Keith, I don't know that you can control that.
I have no control over that. That's their own phone.
If somebody has a question that is stuck on mute, they can email me, Nick Vera. It's NICK.V as in Victor, IRA, at USDA.gov. That's Nick.Vera, VIRA, at USDA.gov. If you have a question that's not answered yet. Thanks. With that said, are there any other questions at this time?
Yeah, this is Douglas Poole over at Mansfield. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I just wanted to piggyback on Craig's. I think there's precedent in Oregon there a couple of years ago when they had their disaster that they utilized cover crops really in a fairly quick fashion in the fall, and then again, of course, in the spring, just to hold this cropland that's all burnt. We're all pretty much all no-till now in North Douglas County, and this crop loss has been disastrous. So I just wanted to put another plug in for cover crops.
So noted. Thank you.
Are there any other practices we should be considering that you guys see? I mean, like you said, Keith, we're kind of putting a list together here. Are there anything else we need to consider?
Yeah, Roylene, this is Kelly with Caldwell Tribe. With the Cold Spring fire on the Caldwell Reservation, the fence specs related to pronghorn movement are quite a bit different than, they call for a higher bottom wire, 18 to 20 inches high. The tribe is really pushing for wildlife-friendly fences, especially after the fires, to replace it because pronghorn movement's really affected. And we reintroduced pronghorn in 2014, 15. And so that's something that we as a wildlife program with the tribe talk about a lot, is how NRCS specs don't always fit the wildlife-friendly design. So that's something that we really would like to see, is a push for the wildlife-friendly pronghorn specs for any fencing, especially within the Cold Springs fire.
Okay, we'll definitely take a look at that and see what staff is doing on all of that and how that fits. We'll have to change our center and spec. That's a lot longer process, and I'm not sure, but we'll take a look.
Okay, thank you.
Hello, Ed Townsend here.
Go ahead, Ed.
Yes, the woody tree removal that was discussed a little bit earlier, was that in watersheds only, or where, we've got a lot of burned timber that has nearly zero value now due to the market. And so was this part and parcel of that? Could you kind of go into that a little bit more?
The woody residue treatment is basically lopping and scattering trees that have fallen over so that they have direct contact with the ground so that they start their decay process, and or if we have standing timber that needs to be dropped, can be used to drop it also.
All right, thank you.
Hi, I have a question regarding the time window for applications and coordination with that. What has that been determined?
So I can explain a little bit about that. If we run this under our general Eqip program, we've already made an announcement for that, that the applications and the eligibility is due by November 20th. If NRCS decides to have a special sign-up period, we would have to request a waiver from headquarters to shorten the time frame. We're required by law and policy to make our announcement of our programs for a minimum of 30 days, let alone this comes at a bad time for our contracting software. Our programs shut down. They shut down yesterday, and they will be closed until October 8th so we cannot do any contracting during this time period. It's the end of the federal fiscal year, and we have to close out our books. For us to do an emergency sign-up and emergency contracting, we would have to get a waiver from headquarters to speed things up. That's a discussion that we are going to have here with our Washington NRCS state leadership. And I would tell you a lot of it depends on the demand we hear from our partners, hear from the public out there. So if you believe we need an earlier sign up than our general Eqip sign up, please voice that concern.
Any other questions, folks?
I have a question about the tree removal.
Yes, ma'am.
Do you have a place on your website or some fact sheet or something about the removing the trees? Because I have about 2 sections of dead trees that need to come down.
Okay. We do have our standards and specifications listed on our website. They're under the Field Office Technical Guide, or the acronym is FOTOG. It's available on our website. You'll be able to find that and then dial into Washington, because each state has their own category in there to look at. If the trees are for commercial harvest, we cannot assist you in that. We can only do things that are pre-commercial harvest.
Yeah, we're not interested in doing anything commercial or any logging. We just need to figure out how to get rid of them.
Okay.
So it sounds like this would work for that.
That is a possibility, yes.
Get some help. Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
We'll give it a minute in case there's any last final questions.
Sorry, this is Jackie again. Just to be clear, for the tree removal, is the NRCS application requirement still the same through, they must have their farm track, all of that kind of stuff, or is it a different process? Just asking for clarity for those on the phone.
For any Eqip application, you have to meet those eligibility requirements.
Okay.
I think that might be our closing music. Are there other questions?
Ed Townsend again.
Yes, sir.
So who would we approach with our concerns over expediting a sign-up? Our local office, and tell them our concerns, or is this forum what we need to speak up on? And I'm specifically addressing both the watershed potential flood issues and the cover crop issue. You know, it's not going to do us any good to have the closing of the sign-up on the 20th of November. By the time we get a contract, I'm probably not going to be able to get cover crops in before Christmas, and that's really not going to get the job done. You know, we don't get an accelerated timeline on something like cover crops. We're going to have to either do it ourselves or risks and consequences, and it's bare ground. That's just my comment.
If you want an accelerated Eqip sign-up period, you can voice it right now. You also can go into your local service center and talk with the district conservationist and ask them to elevate it to their area conservationist. Or, as Nick had said, you can email Nick with his email of nick.vira@usda.gov.
Thank you then.
Thank you.
Good question. Are there any more comments too? All right. Well, hearing no further questions or comments, I'll remind you, as Keith mentioned, you can email me, Nick Vera, if you have anything that comes to mind after the call, or if you are having problems unmuting yourself, whatever. And I'm going to close it out on behalf of NRCS. I'd like to thank you for your time and participation. Have a great day.